Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's hard to go after a lot of the first two panel discussions because a number of things has been talked about. The one that's on top of my mind is, the moment we start looking at a problem, our initial tendency is give me the best of best and everything that is state of the art, and then I'll go try to solve the problem. And interestingly enough, as a country, we've evolved in trying to be as frugal and affordable as possible. And that's a mindset that's probably most relevant right now in terms of even when it comes to how we apply AI. Obviously, a lot of the problem statements that are in the grassroots and how we approach them were talked about, including turning traditional ways of how you solve a problem, being it in the financial segment, banking, healthcare, education, and others. We heard a lot of that. Um, the mindset shift that I want to bring together here is as technology and as engineering community, we need to take the state of the art to making it more state of what's affordable to solve a problem so that it can be applied to really at the population scale. And where that comes into play is primarily around what kind of compute capability do I need to go solve a problem. And for a country of our scale, there are four things that kind of jumps to my mind as important aspects when we take up any solution that we want to apply for a problem statement. Um, the first one is there are certain domains or areas that are still fraught with a lot of inequity in terms of applying technology. There are still several areas where we don't apply technology as much, not for the sake of applying it, but if it can really improve or change the lives of people. So looking at how we can leapfrog there, a good example could be agriculture, and I think it was spoken about, from the government of Maharashtra, how they're trying to look at agriculture, and I'll talk a little bit more on it. Now, as much as we talk about education and we have the most number of engineers or healthcare professionals in the country or for the globe, I think there is also at the grassroots level not enough technology being used. We are a country of 300 million students, and I think in the report that was also called out this morning, access to an effective compute device, which is pretty fundamental. It doesn't matter whether you're learning science and technology, but even for humanities and social sciences and arts and other majors, having an effective device that can not only be a consumption tool, but also a creation tool for students. 300 million students and the number of laptops that we have in this country is only about 15 million. It doesn't matter who makes it, and it doesn't matter how it's made. But it does matter that that number is really appalling, and that shows the lack of technology even in a space like education. So in addition to leapfrog, the second one is the reach. Today, as much as we talk about AI and where we want to apply, models and large language models and things like that, it's still very much isolated in only certain pockets. And it was really heartwarming to see the first two sessions in the morning, where Lalitesh talked about the Meghalaya dialect and the reach and how banking is not about going there and tell me what all you need, I'll give you a loan, but to understand the model from the reverse, from the grassroots, and similarly, taking problems in healthcare and others, the reach is still very much isolated to a very small percentage of the population. And that's where the ability to take your compute or the affordability or the scale of the solution needs to be at the level where it can go to every part of the country, remote places, tier 2, tier 3 cities, whatever that might be. The third one is cost of ownership. We can talk at length all day today and every time about AI and bringing a lot more compute. We have some physical limitations in the country. We don't have sufficient water. We have a huge land issue. And we have challenges with respect to quality of air and things like that. And as you bring large-scale compute infrastructure to solve this, These are going to be standing in front of us. Energy, thermal, power are going to be very fundamental. So approaching how you solve this with technology has to be bounded with realism, reality, as it means to this country, as it means to the problem statement. So you don't need to commute always in a Ferrari. There are a number of vehicles here that are really important, that does transport people in various ways, and we need to look at it. You need Ferraris where it's needed, but you also need simple vehicles that needs to be able to solve it. So that's the cost of ownership that's very critical. And the last one I think is really inspiring to have heard most of them talk today is this problem statements are to be a population scale. Um, and I think you take any problem statement in India, the goodness of our country and the biggest advantage that we have is every problem statement really has a population scale relevance. Almost every. If you were talking about public service, transportation, education, healthcare, agriculture, you name it, all of them has that. And so to be able to take the university and the private sector to collaborate, to learn to solve them at that scale is important, not for this classroom only, but the entire classroom. Like Professor Singler talked about how he is interacting with students. I've heard some of those examples. If that could be taken to every one of the teachers or giving teachers the equipment. I recall someone mentioning earlier the one about 1.5 million teachers. How much have we actually retooled the teachers to be able to teach in this era and be able to interact better? Um, and there are aspects where we can go do that. I do want to call out some examples, even at the cost of redundancy, even though it's been talked about, just so that it can resonate with us a little longer beyond a few hours this morning. So on education, need of the hour is vernacular and personalization. Otherwise, we are leaving a lot of people behind, and we are taking very few with us. And that doesn't do justice to what education really means, or literacy really means. Classrooms are supposed to be vibrant environment where human interaction should be at the middle of it. But if you pepper them with a little bit more of technology where you can have better digital classrooms with projectors that are more interactive, that can still judge the tone of the students in the classroom, give cues for the teachers on how they can interact, would be fantastic, and there are possibilities there. A segment that sometimes leaves and thrives in chaos in India is the retail segment. There is a lot of, it's a very fragmented one. And I'm not talking about the large retail chains or online stores, but the small shops that are there everywhere in the country, the kiranas. And there is a huge gap between them and the large retail stores and online stores. And in some sense, it's a question of survivability for them. But a very simple compute device that has fundamental AI intelligence for them to do inventory, surveillance, being able to do point of sale, as well as even have simple promotional stuff that they can advertise. All can be done with a very simple compute device that almost even doesn't need the network capability. That can be locally done, that's tuned for them. And I did hear in the previous session talked about, I don't start off with only the 300 billion model, start off with what's minimally needed for that environment. And you're going to be able to do that. On health, really local data set is such a critical thing. The data set that we have in our country is very different from what's there in the West. And for a lot of the screening and fundamental healthcare that Dr. Sujay talked about, there are tremendous amount of possibilities with AI-powered screening that can become simple kiosks in the remotest part of the country that can help healthcare workers. Agriculture is again, I think, is one area where it's really a big opportunity for us as a country. We have very diverse landscape, very unique in each one of the regions, and being able to do region-based AI models for the soil or for pest or disease that's very relevant to that small square kilometer, and being able to give the tips, even if it means it's an AI kiosk that can help farmers in the remotest part of the country would be fantastic, both for regenerative and for precision agriculture. Public services is another place, right? You can talk about traffic and talk about railways. Um, there is just ton of opportunity where simple data sets and simple compute affordable that can be put in place that can, you know, predict landslides to actually help women in distress or show traffic conditions. Last but not the least, I do want to touch upon this. We are a country that's very rich in culture. Our languages are many, and our art forms are infinite. Our folklores are decades and centuries old. We haven't done much to be able to help bring technology to bring creative entrepreneurship to that segment. And I think there's a ton of opportunity there where AI and affordable compute can really bring value for that segment. So with that, I think the key summary points that I want to touch upon is local data set, take compute in a way that it's more affordable but to the edge rather than centralizing everything. You do need centralized data centers. I'm not saying no, but that's not the only solution. The reach is important, the cost is critical, and if you have to be inclusive, all of these factors need to come into play. And it's a fantastic opportunity for us in a place like this where academia, private companies, startups, policymakers can actually spend time and figure out a way what can come out of it. Thank you.